Welcome to Life Stories, where we share powerful and inspiring journeys of resilience and strength. Today, we bring you the incredible story of Emma, a woman who faced betrayal and cruelty in the most unimaginable way, abandoned by her husband at a remote gas station while pregnant with their child. But this story isn't just about heartbreak, it's about fighting back, standing up for yourself, and finding unexpected justice. Tune in as we dive into Emma's journey of courage and the lessons she learned along the way. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to start today's story. The sun was unrelenting. It was early afternoon, and we were in the middle of nowhere. Or so it felt. The road stretched on for miles in the flat Texan landscape, the heat shimmering off the asphalt. We had been driving for hours, heading to San Antonio for a much-needed vacation before our baby arrived. At least, that's what I thought it was supposed to be, our last getaway before life changed forever. But the reality of what was happening to me was far from what I had imagined. I had been feeling uncomfortable for days. The weight of carrying our baby, my body swelling as the months of pregnancy ticked by, was starting to take its toll. My husband, Brad, was in the driver's seat, chatting away with his family, as if everything was perfectly normal. We had planned a pit stop at this small, isolated gas station to stretch our legs, and I had asked him to wait for me as I went inside to use the restroom. The walk was becoming increasingly difficult with my growing belly, but I wasn't going to let that stop me from getting out of the car for a moment. When I came out, I was greeted by laughter. It wasn't the kind of light-hearted chuckling you might expect from a family sharing a fun moment. It was mocking. Cruel. Brad, his mother Linda, and his sister Claire were sitting in the car, laughing and pointing at me through the windows as I made my way toward them. The sun was beating down, and I could feel the sweat dripping from my forehead as I approached the vehicle. My heart sank as I saw them all looking at me, their faces full of amusement, while I stood there, helpless and confused. And then, without warning, Brad slammed the car door shut, and the vehicle pulled away. I stood there, watching them drive off, their taillights disappearing down the road. I couldn't move. I was 8 months pregnant, stranded at a gas station in the middle of nowhere, while my own husband and his family took off on their vacation without me. The reality of it hit me like a punch to the gut. This was not just a moment of abandonment, this was a betrayal so deep, so vile, that I couldn't even comprehend it. It was as though the love and respect I thought I shared with Brad had vanished, replaced by something far darker. My hand instinctively went to my swollen belly, as I stood there in disbelief, trying to process what had just happened. It felt like a nightmare. How could he do this to me? How could he, of all people, treat me, his wife, pregnant with his child, like this? A voice broke through my haze of shock. It was Hank, the owner of the gas station. He was an older gentleman with kind eyes and a weathered face. Someone who had clearly seen his fair share of things in his lifetime. He had witnessed everything from inside his shop, and his face was full of anger as he approached me. "What they did, that's not right," he said, his voice tight with fury. "Come inside, get out of this heat. Let me call someone for you." I nodded mutely, my legs barely able to support me as I followed him inside. Hank guided me to a small office at the back of the shop, and I sat down, trying to make sense of everything. My phone was still in the car, along with my purse and all of my belongings. I had nothing, not a single thing to my name, except the sundress I was wearing. I felt utterly helpless, stranded in a place I didn't want to be, at the mercy of strangers. His wife, Barbara, who helped run the store, came in and offered me some water and crackers. Her face was flushed with righteous anger as she looked at me. "I'm calling the local news," she declared. "People need to see this. What kind of man leaves his pregnant wife stranded, and his family laughs about it?" Her words felt like a spark of hope in an otherwise dark moment. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe this would be the moment that would shed light on Brad and his family for who they really were. As I sat there, rubbing my belly gently and feeling the soft kick of our daughter, something shifted inside me. I wasn't just angry anymore. I wasn't just hurt. I was ready to fight. Let them call the news. Let the world see exactly what kind of people Brad and his family were. At that moment, I realized this wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about the betrayal I had suffered, or the pain of being left behind. It was about my daughter. I had to protect her. From a family that seemed to take pleasure in cruelty. From a man who had turned into a stranger right before my eyes. The events that had led me here didn't happen overnight. Looking back, I could see the signs. The subtle ways that Brad's family had always treated me as an outsider. As someone who didn't quite belong. When we first met, he had been kind, genuinely kind, and he had defended me when his family tried to put me down. But things had changed when I got pregnant. Suddenly, it was as if he was a different person. It started with his mother Linda. She had always disapproved of me. But when I got pregnant, her disapproval seemed to escalate. She made comments about how I wasn't Wilson material, and how my simple job as a kindergarten teacher wasn't enough. I had brushed it off at first, thinking it was just the nerves of an overbearing mother-in-law. But now, it was clear that it was part of a bigger plan. And then, there was Claire, Brad's sister. She had always been the worst of them, orchestrating moments meant to humiliate me. I remembered the time she invited me to what I thought was a casual lunch, only to find out it was actually a formal charity board meeting. I had shown up in a simple sundress, completely out of place among women in expensive suits. She had smirked, saying, "Oh, I must have forgotten to mention the dress code." But Brad had always defended me. At least, he had, until I got pregnant. Something had shifted in him. He started agreeing with his mother, laughing at Claire's jokes, and treating me as though I was a burden. It was as if my pregnancy had made me invisible, something to be discarded when it became inconvenient. Sitting in that small office, staring at the security footage Hank had shown me, I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. This wasn't just about my betrayal. This was a moment that could change everything. I would show the world the truth about Brad and his family. I wasn't alone. There were people, strangers, even, who cared. They were willing to stand up for me when my own family had abandoned me. And that made all the difference. As I sat in that small, air-conditioned office, still reeling from what had just happened, the weight of my situation began to sink in. I wasn't just stranded at a gas station. I had been deliberately abandoned by the person I trusted most in this world, my husband. My mind raced, but I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't something I could let slide. Not now, not with my baby growing inside me. The moments dragged on as Hank made a few calls, and Barbara paced around, muttering angrily under her breath. My heart was still pounding in my chest, and I could feel the heat from the outside world still pressing on me. Even though I was safely inside, the injustice of it all weighed heavily on me. But as I sat there, I found myself surprisingly calm. The calm wasn't born from peace, it was the calm before a storm. Tom, the gas station owner, eventually returned to tell me the news crew would be arriving soon. He had already gathered the footage from his security cameras, and he was prepared to show the world what had happened to me. His voice was tight, filled with a righteous anger that mirrored my own. "They can't get away with this," he said firmly. "People need to know what kind of people they really are." As the minutes ticked by, I borrowed the phone in the back office to call my best friend, Nicole. I knew she'd be worried about me, and I needed someone who truly understood. She had never trusted Brad or his family. Even from the start, there had been something about their smiles that didn't sit right with her. Her voice crackled on the line as she answered, "Kayla, thank God you're okay. Are you hurt?" I was about to explain what had happened when she interrupted, her voice grim. "You need to see what they're posting on social media right now. I'm sending you the link." I felt a pang in my chest. I had no idea how they could twist the story, but I feared the worst. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice small. Nicole took a deep breath. "They're calling it a family vacation. Some people can't handle the Wilson lifestyle, and they're all laughing about it. They're acting like everything's fine. Like nothing happened. Brad, his mom, your mother-in-law. They're all at the beach resort, acting like they're untouchable." I felt my stomach churn. How could they do this? How could they laugh at my pain? At the pain of carrying their grandchild? And then, something even more horrifying hit me. What if they planned all of this? I clicked the link Nicole sent me. There, on Brad's Facebook page, were pictures of him, his mother Linda, and his sister Claire lounging by the pool at their beach resort. They were smiling, relaxed, enjoying their cocktails as though they had done nothing wrong. The caption read, "Finally free for a relaxing family vacation. Some people just can't handle the Wilson lifestyle. #beach life #family first." I wanted to scream. The words on the screen mocked me. But it was the laughter behind the photos that made my blood run cold. They were mocking me, mocking my condition, mocking the very idea that I was part of their family. My stomach twisted as I realized what was happening. This wasn't just about abandonment. This wasn't just a cruel moment. This was a carefully planned attack. A plan to destroy me. To humiliate me. And, if they could, take away my daughter. I looked up from the screen. My hands trembling. "They've turned this into a joke," I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. But Hank and Barbara overheard. And their faces hardened. "That's not right," Barbara said. "We're calling the news." The decision was made in that moment. We weren't just going to sit back and let them get away with this. The news crew was coming. And we were going to show them everything. Tom, who had witnessed the entire thing, was going to hand over the security footage. There was no way Brad and his family could spin this. Not now. But just as I was bracing myself for the attention that would soon come, I felt another wave of realization hit me. This wasn't just about showing the world the truth. This was about something deeper. This was about standing up for my daughter. This was about showing her that even when the people closest to you turn their back on you, you can still rise above. You can still fight. I rubbed my belly again, feeling the little life inside me kicking. I wasn't just doing this for me. I was doing this for her. She would grow up knowing that her mother stood up to the cruelty of others. No matter where it came from, even if that cruelty came from family. The news crews arrived quickly, their vans pulling up one after another. It was as though the entire situation had already turned into a spectacle. The media had a way of turning human suffering into a story, shaping it into something that could be consumed by the public. I knew that now. My life had become part of the narrative. But somehow, I didn't feel like a victim in that moment. I felt strong, resolute, even if I was standing in front of the cameras in a worn sundress with no purse, no phone, and no plan for what came next. Barbara had kept her word. She had contacted the news. And now they were here, ready to cover what had happened. Hank stood by my side, his hands folded in front of him, and his face was grim but determined. He had become a quiet pillar of support in the chaos that had ensued. I wasn't alone. As I was being escorted toward one of the news vans, I could feel the intensity of the situation settling in. The bright lights of the cameras, the buzz of reporters. It was all overwhelming, but I knew it had to be done. I couldn't let Brad or his family get away with what they had done to me. The fact that they thought they could manipulate the situation, abandoning me while I was pregnant, laughing at my pain, and pretending it was all a joke, was beyond infuriating. The reporter who greeted me was a woman named Jennifer Parker. She was professional, but her eyes held a warmth that gave me some comfort as I climbed into the van. She looked at me carefully, scanning my face, and then nodded at the cameraman. "Let's get this interview done. But first, we need to make sure you're okay," she said, her voice gentle but firm. I appreciated that. It felt like the first moment of kindness in a long time. And I was grateful for it. As the camera rolled, I could feel myself starting to speak. At first, my voice was shaky, but the words poured out as I recounted the events leading up to that day. I described how Brad had acted differently once I got pregnant, how his family had treated me like an outsider, and how this vacation had been nothing more than a trap to humiliate me. Jennifer didn't interrupt. She let me speak. When I mentioned the social media posts, how Brad and his family had openly laughed about abandoning me, acting as if it were just another family vacation, she gave a small nod. "People need to hear this," she said. Her words were not just professional, there was a sincerity behind them that made me believe she understood the gravity of the situation. The interview wasn't just about the abandonment anymore. It was about exposing the hypocrisy that had run deep in Brad's family for years. It was about showing people the lengths to which they would go to manipulate, humiliate, and deceive others, all for their own amusement and gain. The more I spoke, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was part of a larger, darker plan. I also talked about my daughter, the baby growing inside me. I told Jennifer that the situation wasn't just about me, it was about her. It was about protecting my child from people who thought cruelty was funny. From people who believed that they could control others by breaking them down. As I spoke about my pregnancy, I felt a strength I hadn't realized was inside me before. I was speaking not just for myself, but for my daughter. I had to make sure she would grow up knowing that her mother stood up for her, no matter the cost. By the time the interview was over, the floodgates had opened. My story was everywhere. The footage from the gas station, showing Brad and his family laughing as they pulled away, went viral. It didn't take long for the public to react, and the backlash was swift and unrelenting. Brad's colleagues at Horizon Insurance distanced themselves from him, and his mother's charity foundation faced criticism from all sides. Even his own social circle began to question the family's actions. But the most shocking moment came when I saw the news update on my phone. Brad's company, Horizon Insurance, had announced that they were terminating his employment. The statement they issued was clear. They couldn't be associated with someone who would endanger a pregnant woman and subject her to such humiliation. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. It felt like the first real sign that, maybe, just maybe, this nightmare wasn't going to end with me broken and defeated. But it wasn't just the company that was distancing itself. The attention was shifting, and it was beginning to expose the Whitaker family for the selfish, cruel people they truly were. The foundation that Linda had spent years building was facing scrutiny. The people who had once supported her, donors, socialites, and community leaders, began to pull away. Linda's carefully curated image of the perfect, respectable family was crumbling, and I felt a strange sense of justice, knowing that it was happening because of their own actions. I leaned back in the news van, exhausted but strangely at peace. This wasn't just about exposing the truth anymore, it was about something much bigger. It was about breaking free from the toxic grip of a family that had tried to break me. It was about finding my voice and using it to protect my daughter. No matter what came next, I knew I wasn't going to let them win. The storm that had engulfed my life was beginning to settle, and as it did, I could feel a sense of calm finally washing over me. The battle wasn't over, but I had won the most important fight of all, my dignity. My strength, and my daughter's future were no longer in the hands of people who would use cruelty to control us. By the time the story had made its rounds across the nation, Brad and his family were facing the consequences of their actions. Legal investigations were underway, and the public outrage only grew stronger as more details emerged. Diana's foundation dissolved, and the social circles they once enjoyed turned their backs on them. Horizon Insurance terminated Brad's employment, and even the family's luxurious resort life began to crumble, bit by bit. But in the midst of it all, I had a moment of clarity. My daughter, Mia, would never know the person her father had become. She would only know a mother who stood strong in the face of adversity and fought for what was right. She would grow up understanding that real strength is about standing up for yourself and others, even when the world feels against you. As I held Mia in my arms, watching her sleep peacefully, I knew this was the start of something new. A new life, a new chapter, one where love and respect were the foundations. I had found support in unexpected places, in people like Hank and Barbara, who didn't hesitate to help a stranger, in Nicole, who had never wavered in her belief in me, and in myself. Sometimes, the worst moments in our lives lead to our greatest strength, and in that strength, we find the courage to rebuild, to heal, and to move forward with hope. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel for more life stories.